this incredibly dangerous trip and then be separated on the U.S. side of the border. So they do try to hold those family units together.
How does a 3- and 6-year-old get here?
Very often that's either somebody's traveling with them that they know in the community. More often than not these days it's a smuggler who's bringing them in.
And to the question of what Lola can do to help?
Basically, work with us to get the word out that these are kids in need of our help. Stand up for these kids. We would really appreciate that. There's a big debate happening right now here in Washington, D.C. about how to address this crisis. And it's important that policymakers hear that Americans do believe in the protection of children. So that would be a great help. For lawyers, go to my website and volunteer. We need your help.
And that's supportkind.org, and on Twitter @supportkind. Let's go to Andre waiting in Weatherford, Texas. Andre's an independent. Good morning, Andre.
Yeah, good morning. My question to the lady is, why don't we start holding these? I heard a while ago she said we give billions of dollars to Mexico. Well, these kids come up from Guatemala and El Salvador and Guatemala and El Salvador. They're not coming through the water or through the air. They're coming through Mexico. So why don't we quit giving these dollars to Mexican government in order for them to secure their borders? Because you know when you go to any Albertsons on a Friday afternoon when they get paid, 90% of their money is going back to Mexico. But until Mexico secures their borders from the Central American countries these people coming from, quit giving them the money.
Winnie Young.
Well, Mexico does play a very pivotal role in this issue. The children are generally transiting through Mexico on their way to the United States. So part of this regional effort also has to be to work with the Mexican government to ensure that children can actually seek safety in Mexico itself, rather than making that extra trip to the United States. So we're working very hard to see if we can promote that as part of the policy response from the administration.
And Judy is in Rochester, New Hampshire, on our line for Independence. Judy, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you again for Cspan, too. I have just a couple of ideas, because I do feel sorry for the children who are being dropped off, but yet at the same time, I don't think it's the United States' responsibility to take care of them. But we as the United States citizens, there's a lot of parents over here who would like to adopt children. So why don't we put children up for adoption so they're losing the contact with their family, which I know may sound cruel, but the families are abandoning them anyway, and that way it's taking the tax burden off of the taxpayers, because now you have families who are adopting children who will give them even better love and care. Also, why can't we also do almost like a child support system? We as citizens have to pay child support if we abandon our children. Why don't we charge these countries, deduct it from monies that they owe us or monies that we give them, for each child, deduct that amount of the monies that we give them for their country, and maybe their country will take it from, whether they're a poor family or whatever, but now that country is going to pay us for child support to take the tax burden off of us. We as citizens can't keep paying these. I work hard for my money. I had all I can do to raise my children, and we had to go without to put them through college and high school even, because you have to buy your own books where I was from. So we just can't keep going this way.
2 suggestions from Judy.
Sure. Well, on the second, well, first on the adoption question, most of the children, as I mentioned earlier, actually do have some family member here who can support them. So adoption in those cases obviously wouldn't be necessary. For those children who truly have nobody here, generally they are placed in foster care rather than put up for adoption, just on the chance that they may eventually be able to reunify with their parent. And of course, for the vast majority of children, being with your parents is the safest, best place for you to be. So I've seen a handful of the children put up for adoption ultimately, but it doesn't happen very often. On the second question, I actually would argue the opposite, which is I think that in our international aid, we should actually be offering these countries more money to beef up their child welfare system so that they can take care of their children in the home country rather than kids being forced to flee here.
And we'll go to Roy in Illinois on our line for Independence. Roy, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for C-SPAN. Mrs. Young, you mentioned something about the Obama administration deported the most illegals, and I just kind of like the record to be set straight that they're turning them around at the border, but they're counting them, which is something they've never done. So I'm thinking that's why the numbers are so high for the Obama administration. I'd just like to clarify that. Thank you.
Well, certainly there's been a tremendous focus on the part of the Obama administration on border enforcement. We're spending about $17 billion a year on border enforcement to try and get the flow of irregular migration under control, and it's having its impact. Now, again, I think it's very critical that we separate what's happening with these children from the immigration issue writ large, because this is a humanitarian crisis, as President Obama declared a couple of weeks ago. It's really a refugee situation, and different laws and standards should come into play in dealing with a refugee situation as opposed to an immigration situation.
And in the last minute or two we have left, can you talk about how the Senate passed immigration reform bill would impact unaccompanied children, and if there's any standalone measures in the House that would impact them as well?
Sure. Comprehensive immigration reform as passed in the Senate did not really address this specific situation and crisis that we're dealing with right now, because in terms of the legalization program that it contained, you have to have been a resident for a number of years before you can be considered eligible for adjustment of status. So these kids are new arrivals, so they would never qualify under that program as it's constructed. There were some provisions in the Senate bill that, for example, enhanced children's opportunities to access legal counsel, which we were supportive of. And there have been a number of discussions going on about whether we should address this discrete issue of unaccompanied children through legislation, but nothing's happening to date.
So what would your recommendation be if you could do it through legislation, or would you prefer executive actions?
If there were legislation, I would hope that it would support providing these kids and providing the system with the kind of services to help the kids navigate the process. I think it is a good thing to reach a very quick decision in these children's cases, at the same time preserving their access to counsel and their ability to really navigate the system, but make a decision and decide who stays and who has to go home.
Wendy Young is of Kids in Need of Defense. You can check them out at supportkind.org. Appreciate you joining us this morning on the Washington Journal.
Thank you.
And that's going to do it.